Did you find it difficult to learn Spanish?
Oh yeah.
Because it wasn't, you didn't study it at...
No, I never studied at school.
No.
No. And in fact, languages were my worst subject at school. I mean, I loved English because we had English literature. I had to study the novels, study short stories, plays, Shakespeare, the Irish playwrights. Poetry I was never big into, but I love writing compositions, I love writing stories. So English I think was my favourite subject, but then maths was my next favourite subject, physics and chemistry and geography. So I was more sciences than humanities. Like we in the south, we had to study Irish language,
Yes,
El Gaélico, they say in Spanish. And also French. I took French as a foreign language. They were my worst subjects. I just found it very difficult to get the structure of the grammar into my head, and the vocabulary, and then to speak it and to think and to speak it. So when I came to Spain for the first time, I had zero Spanish.
Zero Spanish,
Zero Spanish, no. Yo me llamo Tim. Yo soy el nuevo profesor de inglés. So I had to start from zero. You must have had the same experience. You're learning, you're at the beginner stage, and you try to communicate with people, and you feel, I'm stupid. It's por favor, puedes hablar más despacio. Yo no soy español, no entiendo. And the problem I think was, I was teaching in the morning, I was teaching in the afternoons. I was living with other English teachers.
Yes, you weren't speaking enough Spanish or listening to enough Spanish.
Or anything, yeah. I mean, it was English all day. I had a Spanish girlfriend, but she had first certificate level English. So we spoke English, all the time. So it was very, very difficult. And then, Spanish. I think the Spanish grammar is difficult. The verbs, the tenses, el subjuntivo. Why there's a subjuntivo, I never know. I mean, this is very, very, I found this very, very difficult, el imperativo, in English we have one imperative, in Spanish it's tú, usted, vosotros, ustedes, for the imperative, very complicated. And then the masculine and feminine nouns, it took me a long time to learn that it was el problema, not la problema.
Exactly,
and then, the amount of times I made the mistake of going to the supermarket before I became a vegetarian or a vegan, and, the difference between pollo and polla, so I certainly made a few mistakes with that, and also cajones is similar to another word, Exactly. I nearly lost a job once, telling my boss where he could put his books, So I found it very, very difficult at the beginning, but I was very constant. San Pedro, where I worked, they provided Spanish classes for the English teachers, but I couldn't go, because I was working so much. Didn't have time. Well, I'd go, but right after lunch, and then you'd be falling asleep in the class, But I was very good that I was. I'd had my Spanish books and I studied them religiously, like every day I kind of worked through them. But I'd say by the end of that year I only had, a pre-intermediate level. So when I went back then to Dublin to study drama, I continued studying Spanish, for those 3 years. And I was teaching English, and, so I met other...
Teaching English in Dublin.
Teaching English in Dublin, yeah. And then you'd meet a lot of other Spanish people. Of course, as teacher, I'm speaking with them in English, but, sometimes you intercambio and you practice a little bit of Spanish as well. So my Spanish did continue improving. But it was when I came back the second time, and then I had a different girlfriend whose level of English was lower than my level of Spanish. So that was when we started to use Spanish to communicate, I had my Irish friends, my English-speaking friends, but...
you started speaking more Spanish probably.
Exactly, going out with her friends, so I had Spanish friends through her, so we have to speak in Spanish all the time, with her family, so that's really when I think you start to improve, when you're mixing with people and you're using it on a daily basis, and so it's time. You have to dedicate time. You have to practice. So what I'd say to any of the people watching, it's no good just coming to class and studying. You have to dedicate time. And there's no
easy answers.
No easy answers. Sometimes you see advertised these different methods. There's no easy method. You have to dedicate time. You have to learn vocabulary, study the grammar, and you have to practice. And you have to watch television. You watch all the series in English, and the movies in English, and go to the internet, por favor, and use it, and read. But spend as much time as possible, using your English.
Yeah.
So it was difficult. It was difficult, and at times you feel really stupid. But you have to go through that.
You do.
And eventually you get past that stage, and it starts to come more easily.
And you become more confident.
Exactly. Yeah.